Oh no, it's going to take longer than 2 weeks. Captain announced a change of destination. The Water Lily would now make for nearby Hawaii rather than San Francisco. We would make port in Honolulu in 5 days and would have to find our own further conveyance from there. Mr. Fogg's lips pressed ever so slightly together, a rare outward sign of entirely understandable annoyance. This, my master said, will not do. Indeed, I agreed, not even daring to calculate the delay and expense our unexpected diversion would cause. Mr. Fogg gave me a cool, appraising glance. Captain Wicker has reneged upon his word as a gentleman, he said curtly before lowering his voice to an almost furtive undertone. Our course is clear. We must mutiny. We must mutiny. Agree wholeheartedly, but he continued on without so much as a pause. See to it, Passepartout. Use your initiative, I offered brightly. Quite, he said, with agreeableness of a gentleman who has just given his valet a near Herculean task. We must mutiny in 5 days when we reach Honolulu. Make your preparations as you see fit. Pickpocketing rife at Paris World's Affair. My task was clear. I was to foment mutiny aboard the Water Lily. I decided to begin exploiting the crew's animosity towards one another, divide and conquer, as oh dear Mama always counseled. I considered starting a race war. So I decided to desecrate the Shinto shrine and blame it upon the zealot Christian converts of the crew. It was not long before the Shinto adherents began to seethe and mutter of their ill treatment, looking towards the captain with suspicious eyes. Such suspicion could easily be tipped into revolt. It was with satisfaction that I noted a certain increase in tension aboard the Water Lily, a situation I would carefully have to exacerbate if my master's mutiny was to have any chance of success. Next, I attempted to ingratiate myself with the submariners? The submariners, who were rather storm-tossed and disgruntled. There are no storms underwater, the captain muttered, her hair a tangle under her cap. We should have submerged, I agreed. Captain Wicker risked all of our lives. I think perhaps he does not trust your ability as submariners. The commander's face darkened at my assertion. Perhaps you are right at that. Perhaps so. I took my leave, giving my seed of doubt time to spread in my absence. I attempted to suborn the obvious targets aboard the Water Lily, but wars were often won by the unexpected. With that in mind, I turned my attention upon the ship's artificer, a tall, rather imposing woman in a short jacket embroidered with gilt copper lily. Artificers were notoriously neutral in civil disruption, but I appealed to her vanity, offering to restyle her rather fusty robes into something more au courant. She regarded my own outfit critically for a few moments, for her mere face blossomed into a surprisingly sweet, if toothy smile. You seem like a man with a good eye, she admitted. I have always wanted to be fashionable. I promised her that she would be the toast of any top deck she cared to walk upon, and had to hope that her gratitude would translate to more direct aid in my revolutionary plans. I spent the day putting the last finishing touches to my planned mutiny. It was a matter as delicate and serious as the creation of a souffle by a master chef. I spread word of my signal amongst my allies and stayed up late, ensuring every man and woman on my side was true. We reached Honolulu in the dark. The captain took a small skiff into the harbor with a few of his officers wishing to inquire about repairs before putting the Water Lily into dry dock. Mr. Fogg watched the boat for a long moment. "Now is the time," he said crisply. "I trust everything is in order." I assured him it was. And he nodded, having expected no other response. "Let us hope so." That my master retreated to his cabin, and I called the signal to arms. The Water Lily erupted into chaos. Everywhere was a clash of sabers and pistols. Now and then I heard the shriek of officers' sonic weapons, but I was not alone. The half of the crew that followed the Shinto creed followed behind me with a rallying cry. They fought their Christian crewmates with vicious determination, clearing the top deck within hours. The Chinese laborers rewarded my friendship with steadfast loyalty, throwing themselves into mutiny with all the desperation of men and women who utterly loathed sea travel, and longed to revenge themselves upon their instrument of torment in any fashion. They lit fires and tore up the already ragged sails, causing some welcome chaos. The submariners, led by Commander Davis, charged out of the hold of the ship like a horde of impossibly athletic avenging angels. There was a long, terrible moment when I wondered at their allegiance. Then Commander Davis caught my eye and winked. "It's Izumi to my friends," she shouted cheerfully, driving back any stragglers loyal to Captain Wicker. I saw Mademoiselle Loretta trip up one of the loyal officers out of the corner of my eye. She tipped her bonnet in my direction, a gesture of respect from one player of the game to another. The whirl of battle took me away, but not before I saw her falsify a magnificent feint and block the gangway of the navigation room. By noon, it was clear that how the day would end. The mutinies raised a ragged cheer of victory. I myself had ended up with a debonair scratch upon the cheek, and had somehow came to be in possession of a brace of pistols and 3 sabers. By the time the captain and the officers returned, we had complete control of the ship. They were quickly trussed up and returned to their skiff to seek their fortune in Honolulu. Mr. Fogg emerged, surveying the recent scene of battle with a calm eye. "Well done," he said with classic gentlemanly understatement. "Still, it was well done, and more, if I do say so myself." And now we're going back to San Francisco. Mysterious French pirate seizes steamer. Fogg and valet making good time so far. I don't think so. We'd have to get across America and the Atlantic in 13 days. To my amazement, the successful mutineers held a vote and elected me the new captain of the Water Lily. I was delighted. Can you imagine, my friends, your humble passepartout, captain of his very own ship? Rest assured, me, it was great part a ceremonial title which made no particular demands on my seamanship. Mr. Fogg, though pleased by the success of our mutinous endeavor, seemed to regard my elevation in rank with some wariness. "I am," he admitted, as we prepared for bed, "somewhat put in mind of Bonaparte. Parbleu. Otherwise, the succession passed smoothly, and I acquired Wicker's top hat as a mark of office. Yeah, we had to make it back to London in 10 days. The new first mate, a cheerful girl by the name of Wong, came to me with an intriguing notion. "As you know, the Water Lily is a ship-to-submarine prototype," she said. "If submariners cooperated, we could convert the to a submersible and make it to port at San Francisco in 2 days rather than 5. I called in Izumi, who greeted me with a flourish and a bow. "My dear captain," she declared, not bothering to hide her amusement, "do you have orders for me? Can you get us to San Francisco in 4 days?" Izumi's eyes sparkled. "Captain, I have been waiting for that order all my life. I will make preparations and we will submerge tomorrow at dawn." Boom. Izumi was a woman of her word. At dawn, the Water Lily begins preparations to submerge. I cannot record the technical particulars of the enterprise, but my own experiences were thus. It began with an unholy grinding of gears so loud that I felt my head would shatter in two. The sails furled, and the mast collapsed. The screw propeller engines transformed themselves. Bells and alarms sounded as the bulkheads were closed and sealed. Within an hour, the Water Lily had transmuted from a surface-skimming steamer to a watertight submarine. Izumi tossed me a fearless grin as she called for us to descend. My ears popped as we plunged ever deeper into the water of the Pacific Ocean, and a curious sounding silence descended upon the vessel. I had little to do but pace the preternaturally quiet corridors of the submarine. Izumi and her crew were in firm and able control. I resolved to enjoy myself. I was still captain of the Water Lily, even in her new configuration. The crew saluted every time I happened to saunter into their vicinity. On the whole, I would rather recommend submarining to the discerning traveler. We surfaced a few miles out from San Francisco. Apparently, a submarine emerging without warning in a harbor could cause all sorts of misunderstandings and complications. Izumi recommended that we row into the port on a skiff. I formally renounced my captaincy to Izumi, as she was clearly the most capable sailor aboard the Water Lily. She blushed in pleasure and seemed unaccountably delighted. "Good fortune, Passepartout," she called as we rowed away. "You always have a home aboard the Water Lily." I turned towards San Francisco, still shrouded in the pale pre-dawn light. "We've gained 3 days," my master said. "I trust it will be enough." I don't think so. But we're gonna try our fucking damnedest to get to Burlington, and then find a way to from Burlington to Washington, and then get across the Atlantic as fast as possible. And I would need to take 2 days. Tomorrow at 5. Hotel. San Francisco seemed less a city and more ravenous beast bent on consumption of everything, even of itself. Within the ever-expanded city limits, enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills, straightened roads, reformed neighborhoods, and dumped the resulting rubble and stone into Mission Bay. I headed towards Chinatown to eat. It was a warren of crowded built wooden and brick houses, temples, businesses, herbalists, laundries, and market stalls selling fruit and flowers. Brightly colored street lanterns illuminated the streets, and little draconic autonomos spewing black smoke called the attention of passerbys to restaurants and gambling houses. A Chinese theater dominated one of the streets, having been imported from Shanghai and reconstructed in San Francisco. It advertised Chinese theatrical performances. Large groups of men stood around smoking, drinking green tea, and calling to each other good-naturedly. I felt quite at home. I had traveled around more than half the world, after all. What was one more foreignness in such a foreign place as America? I decided to approach a young man with a Q ponytail who was relaxing outside a small shop with arms outstretched. He seemed to me to be a laborer, despite his slender frame. His arms were heavily muscled. His name was Jing Huo, and he was enjoying his single day off from working on the Transcontinental Railway to New York. "Is the line done?" I asked, and he shot me a weird look. "Nearly, but no. Outlaws keep stealing lengths of track. It is open to the public as far as Burlington. Still, I should not complain. At least I have a job." What would he do once the railway was complete? Alas, I had little time to ponder this, as I had to bid him a hasty goodbye and return to my master. Or we're taking the Transcontinental to Burlington. And hopefully... Oh god, that shoots... Oh, we've been sailing far too much. We were lucky to arrive in San Francisco just in time to catch a journey along the as-yet unfinished Transcontinental Express, which would take us as far as Burlington in 5 days. Yeah, we're not making it. With only a handful of stops along the way, Mr. Fogg unfortunately was not feeling lucky, having eaten some rather speculative oysters in the afternoon when away from my watcher's eyes. I was most solicitous and brought my master cool glass and weak sugared tea till he pronounced that he felt much recovered. Nope, we're not making it. Tell me about Burlington. How do I get from Burlington to Washington? Ugh. What about Omaha? Yeah, we can't do it. The first day aboard was enjoyable enough. American trains could clearly not compete with their European counterparts, but it was amusing to see them try. The posters proclaimed Pullman's Palace sleeping cars. And while not palatial in the slightest, they were at least serviceable. We sipped cool beer as we rattled through a long stretch of desert in the shadow of tall mountains. I attended to Mr. Fogg and his delicate stomach, which was not entirely better today. Our fellow passengers were a curious mix of gold and silver prospectors, homesteaders, farmers from all corners of the world, Mormons, missionaries, soldiers, and stiff-necked gentry of various sorts. I gave a young black woman with a deep red bonnet and an infectious laugh a wide smile. Her name was Diana. I'm meeting my husband in Cheyenne, she told me. He did construction work in New York, but New York isn't safe anymore. We have enough money to move now. Why isn't it safe? I queried innocently, having only the broad strokes of American news and history. You did not hear about the draft riots in Europe? She asked wonderingly. New York has always had Confederate sympathies, and when the Union began drafting New Yorkers, they rioted. They killed and burned black homes. My husband has never felt safe since. But now we're moving to Cheyenne, she smiled, nearly glowing with happiness. Where else can one go but New York? I asked, thinking of our journey ahead. New Orleans, she replied. You can take the paddle boat down the Mississippi from Burlington, she laughed, though New Orleans is dangerous in its own way. We talked a little more, and the afternoon wore into evening, and we passed by Ogden, close to Salt Lake City. We watched as passengers disembarked, glimpsing fertile fields and well-tended ranches out of the windows of the train. Greetings, Mr. Daniel. Today, a fellow with a painfully trimmed mustache and impeccable suit approached me outside the lavatory. I nodded at him companionably, and his thin lips parted in a contained grin. I'm Felix Granger, he said. You are a puzzle. I was flattered. Monsieur, moi, humble passepartout. I am no more a puzzle than the sun's rise in the east. Truly, I am the simplest of men. Oh, no, do tell me how you came to be on the Transcontinental. Thereby hangs a tale, I can tell, good sir. It seemed a probing question, which made me immediately suspicious of his motives. I made some non-committal answer, but he pressed me further, and finally I confronted him and asked his business outright. You are a sharp customer, and no mistake, he grinned. Though I perceive no harm in you, I am a Pinkerton agent. I knew a little of the Pinkertons. They were a detective agency and had been hired by Abraham Lincoln himself during the American Civil War. What are you doing here? I asked, fascinated. He looked around before leaning closer to whisper his true purpose. I am here because we have heard rumors that the outlaw Jesse James plans to rob this train. So keep your eye out. Great. Not only will we not make the 80-day bet, we're also going to be killed by Jesse James. We stopped at Cheyenne, Wyoming for a few hours in the evening. The Pinkerton agent disembarked to talk with a 6-foot-tall woman who wore the latest slim train skirts and a pistol tucked into her waistband. We watched, none the wiser. At lunch, I asked a sturdy-looking prospector who looked out of the carriage with an expression of palpable awe. That's Esther Hobart Morris, the first woman justice of the peace in all of America, he said fervently. Ain't she something? The Pinkerton agent boarded the train again before the last whistle blew, his face drawn and anxious. We were held up by outlaws, as the Pinkerton man had predicted. They dragged tree trunks over the line and forced the train to a halt before the boarding, brandishing pistols and sabers. They went carriage to carriage, demanding valuables. Typically, the Pinkerton agent was nowhere to be seen. I looked at my master, who had a certain glint in his eye, and I did not doubt that he wished to resist these outlaws' demands, being a man with the deepest respect for the law. The lead bandit fires his gun into the air. "The name," he declared, "is Jesse James. Now you give me everything you've got." The saber lifted to my throat. I had already hidden our valuables on the warning of the Pinkerton agent, so I invited him to search my things with little success. The saber point moved on. Now it was Monsieur Fogg's nest. "What about you?" "Ooh, you look good for it." I jumped to his aid. "He's my gentleman," I declared. "I carried his possessions for him." "Is that so?" the outlaw declared with interest. "So I should technically be taken from you twice, should I?" There was no other option. I hit him. Not with a heavy punch, but with enough to send him a reeling touch. Then Mr. Fogg, with a swoop, battered him over the head with a trunk and threw the man out of our carriage. Through the window I saw him being picked up by a group of rather surprised soldiers who waved a thank you. Then the steam engine restarted and we were soon on our way. Not much worse for wear. A few hours later we reached Burlington. We disembarked, grateful to have arrived in one piece. Burlington was situated on the west bank of the Mississippi River and had grown to prominence along the steamboats that paddled up and down the long stretch of the river. The construction of the Burlington railway route had caused a temporary influx of Chinese and Irish laborers into the town, where many of them drank and generally had a good time. Good times were a scarce commodity in Burlington, or so it seemed to me. The town distinguishes itself in my memory as the place where I managed to buy and then immediately burn a shirt from Mr. Fogg. He was not terribly understanding. I showed him the faulty iron, and he acknowledged that I had not caused the accident through a lack of skill. A great concession in Foggish terms. God, and we can't take a drive, and this doesn't arrive for another 4 days. 3 days. Yeah, we're fucked. We're fucked! We can see what happens if we take too long, I guess.